In this video, we will cover the main reasons and the most common mistakes responsible for graft failure. Several important tips are covered throughout the video that may increase your grafting success, so don't miss any of them. If you like the video, help me make more by liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing to the channel. Most grafting technique success depends on establishing a good connection of the vascular tissues that grow from a thin layer of undifferentiated cells known as the cambium layer. One of the main reasons for graft failure is bad or no cambium contact between the scion and the rootstock. This problem might result from poor execution of the grafting technique, namely when doing the necessary cuts. It can also happen when positioning the scion if you don't ensure that both cambium layers intersect at some point. In all techniques, it's imperative to use a very sharp grafting knife so the cuts can be as straight as possible, facilitating a good contact between the cambium tissues. Bad cuts with irregular surfaces won't be able to make a good connection even by pressing scion and rootstock against each other. On the other hand, minor irregularities and slightly curved cuts are usually not a problem, as these can be corrected by applying adequate pressure when tying the graft. When the scion and the rootstock have roughly the same diameter, cambium alignment is almost foolproof. Different scion and rootstock diameters, on the other hand, can be a huge problem, particularly if the grafter tries to align the cuts perfectly. In some cases, the smaller diameter scion can fit completely inside the cut on the rootstock, and so the cambium layers will never touch and the graft will fail. In other situations, like in the cleft grafting technique, a wider bark on the larger diameter rootstock will prevent cambium contact if the scion is aligned precisely at the edge. In both cases, it's always best to place the scion at an edge or skew it, making the cambium layer cross at some point with the cambium of the rootstock. This way, the new vascular tissues will start growing from that point and the graft will eventually succeed. A way of solving this cambium contact problem can be the use of a different grafting technique. In the bark graft, for instance, the cambium is behind the bark, so the contact is pretty much guaranteed. The modified cleft bark favors the contact between grafting materials of different diameters. The whip and tongue technique has multiple points where the cambiums can intersect. So, whenever possible, use a grafting technique that favors the contact between cambiums to improve your grafting percentages. Be sure to check the videos that cover the different specific grafting techniques available in the channel if you need more information. To avoid failed grafts, always prefer scions that have healthy wood and well-developed buds. you should cut scions from 1-year-old wood. These have the greatest chance of success. There are some exceptions. In some fruit types and situations, 2-year-old wood might give better results. I will try to cover these exceptions in future videos. In most cases, scions should be selected from the middle of that 1-year-old branch. However, healthy buds and straight healthy wood should always be preferred, even if they are in other areas of the branch. Grafts will certainly fail if you use dried out or diseased wood. If there is doubt, check that the branch is in good condition by scraping the bark above the selected area. Reject scions from areas that are drying and display brown wood. In most fruit types, you should avoid using scions with flower buds and prefer leaf buds instead. These vegetative buds will grow into leaves and new branches that will gather energy from the sun. After the flower buds open, these flowers will fall, and leaves, if they eventually show up in the new scion, will take more time to develop. Time that the scion might not have. In spring, a common mistake is selecting scions that are too far along. The buds should be dormant when collected and stored in the fridge until it's time to graft. Grafting a scion that is too far ahead in relation to the rootstock will most likely result in graft failure, as the scion will deplete its resources before it has a chance to receive energy from the rootstock. So that the cambiums of scion and rootstock are able to join, these tissues must be adjacent to each other. If air is allowed between the scion and the rootstock, oxidation will kill the cells and will cause graft failure. That's why it's so important that the cuts are as straight as possible. For the same reason, don't wait too long with an exposed cut, or the tissues will oxidize and the graft will fail. The same fate will happen if water enters the graft, as it will prevent callus formation and it will cause tissue rot. Sun and heat are also enemies of grafts in the early days, as they can cause dehydration. For these problems to be avoided, grafts have to be secured in place using materials that are air and watertight. Tying the graft tightly with tape, raffia and other materials will help join the tissues and will avoid air problems, but not always water damage. The use of electrical tape and parafilm was enough to avoid problems with this vertical patch graft, but it was insufficient to prevent water accumulation and damage in this horizontal one. Waterproof pruning paste can be used in some fruit types and it will solve this problem, but don't allow it to come between the scion and the rootstock or the graft will fail. Covering the graft with special grafting tapes like parafilm and using a paper or plastic bag will help with all the problems mentioned before. The use of aluminium foil is also a good option to avoid sunburn and dehydration, but it should be removed or opened after the first couple of weeks. Usually, we can only graft plants within the same fruit type, and trying to graft different species will fail, like trying to graft a pear tree to an apple rootstock. Plants of the same group might have some degree of compatibility, though. You can graft an almond tree with a flat pitch, like in this example, as both fruit types belong to the same genus, Prunus. Even so, grafting a peach or a plum to a cherry tree might fail, depending on varieties. And even if the grafts appear to succeed at first, they might suffer from delayed incompatibility. These type of incompatibilities are usually only apparent a couple of years after the grafts are made, and the symptoms are poor plant development and weak graft connections that might break easily when stressed. For instance, most citrus varieties will be compatible with each other, but some, more exotic ones, will not, and most of the times the only way to know is to try it. There is no rule without exceptions, and some plants from different groups are compatible. Loquats can be grafted to other loquats, but are also compatible with quince, and so are pears and Asian pears. Quince is even preferred as a rootstock to both pears and loquats due to its root resistance to being waterlogged and early fruit production. Nevertheless, the resulting trees have a lower lifespan, so sticking to the same species when grafting is usually a good idea. Finally, some varieties and rootstocks have a great difference in vigor. While this mainly causes aesthetical problems, when the rootstock is more vigorous, it can be a real problem the other way around, so try to avoid these situations or the resulting tree might break at the graft point after a few years. Not all grafting techniques can be used successfully with all types of fruit trees. Some techniques work better than others, depending on the fruit type you are trying to graft. Cleft and whip and tongue can be the best choice for pears and apples, and bud grafting might give better results with peaches and plums, while bark and patch grafting are usually the weapons of choice to change varieties in citrus and olive trees. So, choosing the most effective technique for the type of plant you are grafting improves your chances of success. Check the videos on the best techniques for some fruit types already available in the channel. More fruit type specific videos will be published soon, so don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. Associated with a grafting technique best suited to the fruit tree type you are trying to graft is the time of year. Bark grafting in the winter or sheep budding in the peak of summer might be doomed to failure, as the conditions are not right for those types of techniques. For bark grafting, the sap must be flowing, so it slips easily, and that only happens when the plants have left dormancy. Excessive flow of sap might cause problems and graft drowning in some fruit types like fig trees and walnuts. So, choose the best time of year to graft these types or use techniques to reduce the flow of sap to the graft. On the other hand, some techniques require a dormant scion and a rootstock that is waking up. For instance, when grafting in early spring, scions should be dormant and rootstocks should be waking up. Recommendations on the best time to graft each fruit type can be found on grafting specific videos available on the channel, and more will be published in the future. Finally, another mistake that might cause graft failure is incorrect follow-up of the grafts. Failure to remove and keep old growth in check will lead to competition issues when changing varieties. For instance, always remove all the buds below a graft, or the cheap buds might dry out. When budding, the growth above the graft should be removed gradually, or in some cases the tree might remove all the sap from that branch. Removing protections too late or too early might cause grafts to fail for some of the reasons already mentioned, like weather exposure. All these situations will remove sap from the grafts, causing them to dry out and fail. These last three topics will be covered in more detail in future videos. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy my videos, like, subscribe, share and comment to help me make more. Click the bell to receive notifications of new videos.